Well, well, what has the cat dragged in today? It's a quick interlude video. Now, this is a topic that I originally had planned on working into another video, but decided to go ahead and address it now to avoid any potential ongoing confusion. And that is, at the conclusion of the last video, we had our character controller working, operational, and moving, but you might have noticed something. Might not, too, depending on how you set your camera angle. But it is an issue, and it's something that's going to be very visible once we start having our AI characters move. And that is, so I've got the game running, and if I rotate, everything looks normal. Pay special attention to how my shadow appears to be connected to my foot. But then something happens when I proceed to start walking. It's a little bit hard to see from this angle. But if I start rotating back around, oh dear. My shadow seems to be disconnected from my foot. And if I go into scene view to take a closer look while things are running, I can see that yes, without question, I am floating ever so slightly above the ground. This is not good. We do not want this. But why is it happening? In this particular case, it is a combination of a lot of factors and highlights one of the problems that you will face attempting to kludge together a bunch of stuff from the asset store. I have the animations that were developed in isolation. I have the model that was developed in isolation. And I have this character controller code that was developed in isolation. And upon trying to slam all three of these isolated independent elements together, I end up with this slight issue. And this is an issue, by the way, that I have with every single Cinti Studio model in existence if I am using Unity's character controller. You put a Cinti Studio model together with a character controller, and this happens. Whereas if I use a Cinti Studios model with the Invictor character controller, works great. No problems whatsoever. And it's just one of those things where I am taking three independently developed things, smooshing them together, and a problem occurs. Now, thankfully, the solution is fairly simple, even if it isn't necessarily straightforward. And I'm not going to get into the specifics as to why this fixes it, because it goes far beyond the scope of this tutorial sequence. But at the end of the day, models are going to have an avatar. And the avatar is what defines how this mesh is mapped to all of these different points that we have in the root. And so I am going to look at the player object in the hierarchy. And over here in the inspector where it says avatar under the animator component, I am going to click on that once. Not the picker, the actual name. Anytime you do this in a selectable field like this, it will ping and highlight the asset, or in the case of a game object, the game object in question that is linked to that pickable slot. And there it is, character's avatar. And I'm going to click on Configure Avatar. I am not touching any of this information with a 10-foot pole right now. I am in here to do one thing and one thing only. That is to take the root, come over here to the inspector, scroll down to the bottom, and change the Y position to -0.1. I am then going to apply that and click Done. I want to stress, this is a hack fix. The correct way of doing this would be to have the 3D modeler on your team open this up in Max or Maya or Blender, whatever program you're using, and properly fix the root point that is causing this issue. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to do the hack fix. Now, our fix does cause one small problem. Notice now my ankles have disappeared into the floor. If I come in here into scene and I look, yep, clearly, without question, my feet are slightly embedded into the floor. Now, the instant I move, now my feet are correctly on the floor. Well, ever so slightly levitating, but at this point, it's so close that we can't tell the difference. One last hack. Since it does look weird to have my feet embedded into the floor until that first time that I move, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my macro that handles my movement. I am going to edit that graph. And I'm going to hook into the start event. So I'm going to right-click, Events, Lifecycle, and Start. Or I could just type in Start and search for it that way. And what I'm going to do, because Start, remember, Start runs right before the very first update frame. So Start's going to fire really before anything's visible. What I'm going to do is I am going to use a character controller.move command, and I am going to move on the Z 0.01. Yes, it's a magic number, but in this particular case, it would be way overkill to actually define a variable for this, because I'm never using this value again. And ideally, if I could, oops, I wanted to click on full screen there, I would want to put some kind of a note on this, but sadly, there's no easy way of doing that, to put in a note here of saying, what is this doing? But sadly, there's no quick, clean way of doing that. Now, if I hit the run button, my feet are no longer starting off embedded into the ground. And my feet are close enough to the ground now that it looks like my shadow is connected and everything is working okay. Of course, now his ankles are embedded into the ground, but we can also fix that when we go to look at the enemy. So there we go. An odd little animation glitch that we have to fix that occurs because of the unique combination of things that we're trying to put together that were independently developed. It's just a risk that you face when using stuff off of the asset store in Unity. Okay, and if that video was of use to you, contained useful information, thumbs up would be appreciated. And if the whole thing just kind of annoyed you, well, the dislike button's right next to it. Until next time.